area in Hamilton County. And they help us with a lot of things. Mainly, they are our connection to resources. It's because of the We Thrive, Hamilton County We Thrive organization, that they put us in touch with the Alzheimer's Association, and that's where this really started. Once we got in touch with the Alzheimer's Association, Tammy, who is the administrative
executive assistant to the village manager
of the village, and she's also the clerk of council and a great communicator. I want to thank her for telling me about Chief Wallace and the Amberley Village Police, because it was a perfect fit. Tammy recognized it. Chief Wallace sat down with me and explained a little bit about the senior safety program, which you're going to hear more about today. And it was a perfect wedding, if you will, between the Alzheimer's Association and Amberley Village Senior Safety Program. So I want to thank Tammy for doing that. I want to thank the chief for weighing in and explaining to me the connections and how this all can be pulled off. Our committee, and I'd like to just briefly thank them and introduce them one at a time, just for them to wave their hands and say hello. First of all, Dara Wood is over here. She is on the village council and a member of our committee. Dan Ketcha, in the middle of the room there, he's been doing a lot, and last year during the ice cream social, he organized, along with another member of our committee, the food drive. And so that's another thing that we've done. Chia Ostreicher is not here tonight, but she is the one that's coordinating pickleball. So that's another activity that we've organized. I used to organize, and still will probably, yoga on the lawn. And then, of course, we have these presentations. So we're going to continue to do the health and wellness programs. We encourage you to consider joining our committee if you're interested in helping out. And we have some papers, I think, on the entryway when you came in that talks a little bit about the things I just mentioned. Our contact at We Thrive Hamilton County is Alexandra Gonzalez. She could not be here tonight, but she did make certain that we got a lot of swag over there. So there's glasses and a couple of other things that you might want to pick up. I think I've said enough. I'm going to turn it over to the chief.
I really didn't plan on speaking, but I decided when I came in the room and I knew everybody, so I figured I would. Seriously, I want to say thanks to you guys for understanding the importance of this, whether it's for you, whether it's for someone else, or whether you get something out of this, of recognizing someone else's need and able to get them the resources they need. This would not be successful, wouldn't be pulled off if the village manager, who's standing in the back of the room, Scott Larmer, he gives me the opportunity. Sometimes I come up with some crazy ideas, but in 2021, we had a situation where we lost the power down Elbrook, and everybody remembers that. And we went up and down the street handing out bags of ice because we knew the power was going to be out a long time, but we started seeing how many people there are that live alone and really don't have contacts with people. So that kind of put me on a mission. The mission was to write a grant, try to hire an officer to identify these people so they have a companion, whether it be a friend or whether you need assistance, whether you have somebody coming to work at your house and you're not comfortable with that. And we couldn't have found a better person than Chris Perry. And Chris, he's been working with Kelsey, and this relationship's been great. And now that We Thrive is partnered with us, I think this is going to make the program even better and bigger. So I appreciate you guys. I hope you use the service. I hope you grab some key rings and flashlights and everything else back there, and know that we truly appreciate you guys, and we couldn't do this without you. Thank you.
All right, I guess I'm up. Good evening, everyone. It's so great to have all of you here. Thanks for joining us. I'm Kelsey Nyheiser. I'm a program manager with the Greater Cincinnati chapter of the Alzheimer's Association. I tend to move a lot and talk with my hands, so if I get too far away from the mic and you can't hear me, just give me, wave your arms or give me some kind of signal, and I'll make sure I get back on the mic. I want to make sure everyone can hear. So tonight is going to be our first session in a series of 4, and I have some information I'm going to share with you in just a bit. It talks through all the different topics that Sir Perry and I worked on together to really make sure that we had a great partnership in the content that we can share with you when it comes to health and safety. And tonight we're really going to be focusing on the content I'm going to share with you is all around how we can kind of keep ourselves healthy, how we can age well, and really hone in on the different behaviors and lifestyle habits that we can take part in every day to help reduce our risk of developing dementia. So we're going to start by really making sure we all have a baseline understanding of what I mean when I say dementia and what I mean when I say Alzheimer's. And then we're going to talk in all of these different categories about the ways that you can reduce your risk based on what we know around the research on Alzheimer's and dementia. So this is a program that we give out in the community regularly. It's called Healthy Living for Your Brain and Body. So we're really going to hone in on those tips around what we know on the latest research around Alzheimer's and dementia. After I kind of talk you through these different objectives and we cover this information, I'm going to turn it over to Officer Perry. He's going to share some really helpful information about the senior safety program with you all. And then we want to open it up to you at the end and make sure that we address any of the questions that you asked. If more questions come up during our presentation, we're going to kind of refer you to some resources that we have here as well. So hopefully by the end of the night, you're going to be just overflowing with new knowledge, right? Which is also good for your brain. So what we're going to be doing tonight is talking about and identifying the reasons that we want to be taking care of ourselves holistically as we age, right? And so some of this information is going to probably be recommendations you've heard before. You may have heard it from your specialist or your general physician about, things that you want to do with your diet, things you want to do with your exercise. So what we're really going to do today is reinforce a lot of that information and how it kind of reduces your risk of dementia or a mild cognitive impairment. So we're going to talk about strategies in each of these different areas. So we're going to talk about physical health and exercise, your diet and nutrition, your cognitive activity, your social engagement, and what they're finding right now in the research is the importance of sleep and stress management and how that plays a role in this as well. We're going to talk about how we can do all of these things at once to really help maximize the benefits here. So when you came in, I know we have a ton of resources and information here for you today. I had some workbooks out. There's a lengthier workbook and then a condensed one. So if you want to pick up one of those or you did pick up one, it can give you an opportunity to write down notes and ideas as we talk. So if there are things that resonate with you and feel really true to your life and things that you want to practice, you can write that as we go. I also brought a sheet on the MIND diet, and there's a helpful kind of infographic sheet of all of your 10 healthy habits, just so you have something that you can share out with a friend or put it on your fridge as a little reminder. So when we talk about aging in your health, we're really talking about, this evening, we're talking about those modifiable risk factors. So when we talk about our risk of dementia, I'm going to give this away a little early. Our greatest risk factor is age. So as we age, your risk increases. By the time an individual hits the age of 85, 1 in 3 people are living with a form of dementia. So aging well, we're talking about your genes, your genetics, your environment, and your lifestyle. So when our research advocate at the association talks about risk factors and all of the things that go into play in talking about our risk of developing dementia, we have those non-modifiable things like our genetics, like our age, our sex, our race, our ethnicity, that we don't have control over. We have control over those modifiable risk factors. So we're going to be talking about those at length this evening. So like I said, our diet, nutrition, our exercise, our sleep, our stress management, all of those different categories. And all of those things go into play when we're talking about our risk. So I know that oftentimes when we're in the community, we hear people say, my mom had it, my grandma had it, what's the point? How can I avoid it? It's not that simple. Even if you have the genetic code that can lead to that correlation of you developing Alzheimer's in 30 years, it's not a guarantee. It's something that you want to look out for. I would say think about it the way that you think about your risk of diabetes. You know, if you have diabetes in your family, it's something that you want to monitor, that you want to be talking to your doctor about, you know, when you have your annual physical, making sure that that's something that you're kind of keeping on your radar. So think about it like that. So our lifestyle choices can play a huge part in helping our body and brain stay healthy. We know that these two things are deeply connected. So when we talk about the connection between our brain and body, this is pretty obvious to us, right? We like to think about our brain as the body's computer, right? It's responsible for receiving all these messages in and sending lots of messages out. We have billions of neurons in our brain that are responsible for all of that messaging, right? So all of the transmission of things from our language and speech to our body movements, our behaviors, our understanding of our societal norms, and all the different things that your brain does. So what we want to focus on in all of these different categories that we're talking tonight is blood flow to the brain. So the brain, to stay healthy and to keep moving at a healthy pace, it's all dependent on oxygen. So when our heart beats, 25% of that blood goes directly to the brain. So we want to think about different activities and stimulations that are going to help increase that oxygen flow to our brain. Okay, so before we go any further, again, I just kind of want to make sure that we all have a shared understanding when we talk about Alzheimer's, when we talk about dementia. I'll say when we are out in the community, this is probably the question we hear the most. What's the difference between these two terms? They're not the same. I'm a really visual learner, so I wanted to make sure that you could have a little bit of a visual here. This umbrella is super helpful. So when we think about the term dementia, we are talking about an umbrella term that's really describing a series of symptoms. So they're related to cognitive impairment. It might be our memory. I think when we think about Alzheimer's, memory is probably the thing that comes to mind more than anything, right? So our memory can be part of that, but also any changes in thinking, any changes in behavior, all of that is related to these symptoms. And when we think about, I would say, 3 different tiers of a brain, any age, any brain. We can think about a healthy, normal brain, right? We all have our different idea of normal. We have what we call a mild cognitive impairment. Have you heard this term before, or an MCI? So when we think about the different domains in our brain, our cognitive domains, they're responsible for different things. I mentioned before, speech, language, movement. So when we're talking about a mild cognitive impairment, you have one of those domains that is impacted. You're maybe experiencing some symptoms there, but you're still able to function fairly independently in all of your activities of daily living. When we're talking about dementia, so that third tier, we went from a healthy brain to mild cognitive impairment to dementia. Dementia is when we have 2 or more cognitive domains that are impacted, and an individual is not able to function day to day with those activities of daily life. Let's think about driving, paying our bills, cooking, toileting, getting dressed, showering, eating. They can't do that without significant assistance, especially over time. So we have behavioral changes that are happening in the brain. And when we think about dementia versus Alzheimer's, Alzheimer's is the most common form of dementia. So it actually makes up 60 to 80% of cases of dementia. This graphic is a little outdated. What you see here in the size of the little human figures is related to the most prominent forms of dementia, but there are over 100 forms of dementia. Some people say 100, some people say 120. So we have Alzheimer's making up the most prevalent, which is why you probably hear it more than these others, followed by vascular dementia, which happens if someone has had a stroke or a series of strokes, followed by dementia with Lewy bodies. So I would say if you're thinking about Lewy body, just to give you a quick differentiation, it's associated oftentimes with a more rapid progression, as well as hallucinations or delusions are a big part of the symptoms there. And then frontotemporal dementia being the last one that you see here. So this one you may have heard about recently. This is what Bruce Willis is living with. So he's disclosed that and has kind of brought it a little bit more to the forefront. Some people, when they talk about it, you might hear the term FTD. They're talking about that frontotemporal dementia. So the big difference there is kind of just the way it progresses in the brain is a little different. Alzheimer's typically hits your hippocampus, your short-term memory first, which is why we see people forgetting names or repeating themselves or getting easily confused. with frontotemporal dementia, it's in your frontotemporal lobe, which is impacting a lot of your executive functioning, so your ability to kind of make logical decisions, as well as some of your social filters. So you might find someone saying strange things or asking questions or maybe saying silly things that don't feel appropriate to say in public. So that's kind of what I would say is the quick difference between these terms. So just to give you a little bit more on Alzheimer's disease, I wanted to make sure we pointed this out. When we're talking about Alzheimer's disease, we are not talking about normal aging. This is not something that just happens when you turn 85. This is a progressive cognitive disorder. And people can live into their 90s without Alzheimer's disease. It's a progressive brain disease, so as of today, we do not have a cure for this disease, and it does get worse over time. So in the beginning stages of Alzheimer's or any form of dementia, symptoms and issues with those activities of daily living might be fairly mild. They're going to get worse over time to where an individual is likely going to need round-the-clock consistent care. So what's happening here is that we have nerve cell death, tissue loss throughout the brain, which is impacting nearly all of its functions. We're going to talk about neuroplasticity and some of the activities that we can do to help stimulate your brain to help offset some of that dying out. I want to point out this last piece. When we talk about dementia, or we talk about Alzheimer's as we continue this series, I'm going to say things like on average or typically, because this doesn't look the same in any two individuals. It makes it really, really complicated to talk about what this looks like and to even understand the research and to find that cure, because it looks different in every individual. So it progresses a little differently. We might see different behaviors and communication needs as well. Okay, so to focus on what we're really digging into this evening, this is kind of our pie chart of the different categories that we're going to be honing in on. So taking care of yourself as you age, we're going to be looking at all four of these categories, and I mentioned we're also going to throw in stress management and sleep as well. So as we go through these, again, just kind of think about different areas of your life or activities or ideas that you might have that you can employ that can help play a part in this whole, behavioral practice. So to start with physical health and exercise. So what is happening in our body with physical exercise? It's triggering a biochemical change. So it's helping with the production of new neurons. So we were talking before about, when someone has Alzheimer's or dementia or some of those early stages of a cognitive impairment, we're having some plaques and tangles that can develop in the brain. We might also have some proteins that are building up that lead to that amyloid development, and neurons are dying off. So when we're talking about these activities that are stimulating the brain, it can help with that generation of new neurons. It can help neurons have new wiring and learn to kind of communicate in different ways, new blood vessels, connections between those neurons in the brain. So when we look at brain imaging for someone who has that increased physical activity, they have a larger hippocampus where our short-term memory is happening, a larger prefrontal cortex, and temporal lobes. So these are all those areas that I mentioned before on the previous slide that are tied to executive functioning and memory. So those being bigger is a great sign. So when you think about what this looks like for you, when I see this slide, I always like to point out I hate running. I am not a runner. I'm a kind of yogi. I do some weightlifting. So I'm not telling you anything tonight. If you are not practicing any kind of physical activity or strenuous activity, don't start training for a marathon tomorrow, right? What I want you to focus on in any of these categories, we're going to talk about how you're going to maximize the benefits, but any amount of progress, any attempt to work towards this is important and beneficial for your brain. So even if you don't get it right every day, or you hit a slump during the holidays when the trays of cookies are everywhere and you might have more wine than usual, what we are looking for is kind of that overall increase, right? That average. So this is something that you can practice, and we want to make sure that you're choosing activities that are sustainable for you. So don't worry about training for a marathon because you think it's going to increase your benefits the best. Think about different activities that you can do that are going to work for you, that you'll stick with. So maybe that's hiking or walking in nature or taking a stroll with a friend or walking around the mall if it's a time of year when it's rainy and gross outside. Think about different ways that you can do this that work for you. What they're talking about here with that maximum benefit, right, is exercise that's moderate 3 times a week at least, for around a half hour to an hour each time. So that's going to increase your heart rate. That's what we're looking for. We want to pump that blood and get the oxygen to your brain. So when you're thinking about your age, you want your heart rate to increase to 50 to 60% of its recommended maximum based on your age. I will also say that in any of the things that we're talking about this evening, it's going to be based on your individual needs, your other healthcare plans. Make sure that before you jump in and start training for a half marathon tomorrow, that you talk to your doctor, right? Make sure that you're developing a plan that is safe and healthy for you. That's the whole goal of this evening, right? So don't, overdo it and hurt yourself here. We want you to be safe. When we talk about moderate exercise, talking with a friend, so if you are walking with someone, talking with them should be a little challenging. So again, I mentioned, do something you like. Don't get up tomorrow and try and run 10 miles. Start small. If you are looking to do a light jog, maybe it's a half mile. Work your way up to a mile. Try some different trails, or maybe getting on a treadmill is better for you. Make sure that you're moving safely. We do want to see that increase in your heart rate. That can be done with a strenuous, speed walk. Take a friend with you. We'll talk later about the importance of cognitive social engagement, so you can kind of double up some of the recommendations we're going to make and walk with a friend. It can help keep you accountable too. I know that I'm going to get out of bed in the morning if I have someone waiting on me. So having that friend joining you can help kind of keep things accountable for you. And I mentioned, make sure you check with your doctor before you start. I feel like I probably in 2025 don't need to explain to anyone why we recommend not smoking, right? This is something we've all heard before. We also want to make sure that we're avoiding excess alcohol. That can create a lot of brain fog. It can also lead to increased risk of falls or tripping hazards, and it can just really impact your ability to get a quality night's sleep. So when we're talking about getting adequate sleep, your brain has a natural superpower in the way that it does housekeeping while we're asleep. And I know I think every time I give this presentation, someone wants to ask me about taking naps. I am really bad at naps. Naps don't work for me. They make me groggy all day. But if you love taking a midday nap and it allows you to kind of re-energize and get some activity in for the rest of the day, by all means. What we're talking about here with sleep is making sure that you're getting a recommended 7 hours at a time, because your brain is going to need to go through a series of 2 to 3 different cycles that can help it kind of consolidate and wipe away a lot of those proteins and toxins that kind of build up through the day that we don't want sticking around in your brain long term. So during your sleep cycle, your brain is transferring memories from your short term to your long term, so it's helping to kind of lock in a lot of the things that you experience and the things that you know, and it's removing those contaminants from your brain that we don't want in there long term. When we're talking about getting a good night's sleep, I know it's a lot easier said than done. So think about ways that you can start to have some routines and habits to your sleep hygiene. So maybe it means if you're trying to get to be asleep by 11 p.m. every night, maybe by 10 p.m. we're getting into bed and we're reading. We're limiting our screen time later in the evening. We're finding those ways that we can relax and wind down. Maybe it's a warm bath before bed. Maybe it's a hot cup of tea. Maybe it's a couple chapters in your book or a show that relaxes you. I watched ER the other night before bed. I don't recommend doing that. That's just your dreams. Don't do that. Make sure that you're sleeping in a cooler environment with the curtains closed. You want it to be cool and dark. You want to keep your phone in another room. If you use it as an alarm, get an old school alarm clock, right? Just the presence of your phone, even if you're not checking it, your brain is still thinking about the idea that maybe you're receiving something, and it's distracting you even if you don't realize it is. So we want all of that out of your bedroom. We want to avoid head injury. If your physical activity includes rollerblading, make sure you're wearing a helmet. I did a talk a couple weeks ago to a group of bikers in Loveland, and I had to do the show of hands for how many of them wear their helmet, and I did not feel cool telling them all to wear their helmet. when we think about stress, so stress in short amounts can be helpful. It helps us make quick decisions. I'm sure Officer Perry could kind of talk to that, right? That cortisol goes off in our brain, that stress hormone, and it gives us those options, those fight, flight, or freeze options, right? It keeps us alive. When we were, living in caves way back when, our cortisol, our stress, kept us from admiring a beautiful sunset if there was a mountain lion that wanted us to be dinner, right? So we want to make sure that, yes, stress can be helpful. It can help us with deadlines. It helps us file our taxes maybe, but we don't want it in our brain long term. The presence of cortisol in your brain for longer periods of time has a direct correlation to mild cognitive impairment. So we want to find ways that we can make sure with our sleep that we're flushing that contaminant out of our brain. We can also do things like breathing exercises or meditation, or maybe it is your walk in nature, whatever that calm down and reset looks like for you, that can help to bring up our systems back online and out of that kind of fight, flight, or freeze mode. We also want to make sure we're paying attention to any depression, anxiety, any kind of mental health concerns. All of these things are related. And again, make sure that we're visiting our doctor and asking questions regularly. Okay, so physical health, I feel like I spend the most time in there. So we're gonna start to breeze through the next sections a little faster because I wanna make sure we have plenty of time for Officer Perry as well. So we're gonna talk a little bit about diet and nutrition. I did print out a helpful handout on that MIND diet. So we're really gonna be focusing on the MIND diet, which is a combination of the DASH hypertension diet and the Mediterranean diet, which I'm sure many of you have heard of. What do you know about the Mediterranean diet?
Plant-based, mostly vegetables, fruits.
Plant-based, mostly vegetables, fruits, yes. Fish.
Lots of olive oil.
Lots of olive oil, yes. So you're familiar. I'm gonna jump us forward. So we all know that food is fuel for our brain. I made sure I had a really great snack before I left because I am a hangry person and I didn't want to do that to any of you. But we also know, so our diet and any guidelines you've heard before helps reduce our risk of heart disease, of cancer, of Parkinson's, stroke, diabetes, also Alzheimer's and dementia. So again, when you've heard these recommendations before, I hope this isn't new news to you because it's just all the more reason to put it into practice, right? So again, we want to think about our average. We're working towards a healthier choice, right? I am not going to stand up here as someone who loves fries as much as I do and tell you to never eat fries, because don't come find me tomorrow at opening day. I will probably be eating some fries. What I want you to think about here with the MIND diet. So the MIND diet, when you really look into it, it's a points-based system. But what I want you to focus on here is some of the do's and maybe the things to avoid, or the sometimes treats. So we want 5 to 6 servings of fruits and vegetables every day. We want to focus on whole foods. You mentioned plant-based. We want nuts, grains, whole grains, beans, legumes. We really want to focus on lean meats, poultry, and fish. Try and, if you really love a steak or a hamburger and that's your favorite, you're a big advocate of red meat, maybe once a week, maybe a couple times a month. There are studies that are showing that processed red meat, the really good stuff, pork, bacon, hot dogs, has a tie to cognitive impairment as well. The things you want to avoid here, saturated trans fats, processed foods, all the things that come in our foods, all the extra sugars and fats, all the extra salt, deep fried food, or French fries, and those unhealthy fast foods. So again, I don't want you to feel like if you have a stressful day tomorrow and you fall into a bag of French fries, it doesn't mean that you can't get up on Friday and make a healthy choice for breakfast. So we want to try and work towards this healthy goal and not make it feel like a punishment. We want this to feel sustainable over time. Okay, so with our cognitive activity. So we're talking here about keeping our mind active to keep those brain cells functioning. So again, cognitive activity, just like our diet, our nutrition, our exercise, we're talking about blood flow to the brain. So with our mentally stimulating activities, this can help maintain or even improve our cognition. So the way that we have a volunteer who is a neuropsychologist, even if that doesn't mean, formal education, it could mean learning a new language or learning a new skill, picking up crocheting. I'm really bad at that. Find something that you want to learn and put that into place and kind of make sure that you're continuing to kind of learn and stimulate your brain. Has anyone heard of the NUN study before? Yeah, so does anyone want to, I'm going to put you on the spot, does anyone want to tell me what you know about the NUN study? The study out in Minnesota. Okay, I'll go, yeah, do you want, go ahead.
Well, they eat well, they sleep well.
Yes.
They have a healthy lifestyle, they avoid a lot of alcohol,
Yes,
so.
yeah.
And they live
Absolutely.
fairly long lives, most of them.
Yeah, so they studied the specific group of nuns in Minnesota. And really, I've given this presentation to a group of nuns and told them about the nun study and said, keep doing what you're doing. They lived together in community, even after retirement. They stayed active, they were volunteering, they were gardening, they were eating all their meals together. They were so active. When these nuns passed away, they were in their 80s and 90s, and when they passed, they had all donated their brains to science. What they found when they looked in these nuns' brains is that there was the biological changes had taken place in their brains that would imply mild cognitive impairment and forms of dementia. But it wasn't present in any of their physical symptoms. They weren't displaying any of those while they were living. So things like neuroplasticity, keeping your brain active, figuring out ways that even if your brain is experiencing those biological changes, it's finding ways to kind of rewire and continue to function because it's staying stimulated. So what can we do? I'm going to teach you my 3 rules here. What you want to do with any cognitive exercise, we want to make sure that we're focusing on novelty, so making sure you're consistently kind of rotating in new things, adding in new activities, new things that you want to learn. Variety, so maybe you're really into, right now I got into Wordle pretty late, but now I Wordle every day, and now Wordle is taking less and less time for me to finish, so now I'm adding in spelling bee. But I should also be doing some jigsaw puzzles or crossword puzzles or Sudoku, whatever it is, checkers, lots of different options. So don't just plan on, picking one puzzle, checking the box and thinking that's it. You want to make sure that you're adding in a variety here. And challenge. So like I said with my Wordle, it's taking me less and less time. That probably means I need to up the challenge. I need to switch. So if you're able to, complete your crossword and have a phone call with your friend, that's probably not challenging enough for you. You want to be able to have to kind of focus on that activity solely. That's how you know your brain is going to be stimulated. You can read books, articles, puzzles, I mentioned that, games, learn a new skill, learn a new hobby. Make sure that in whatever form you're engaging in ongoing learning. But really keep that rule of thumb, the 3 rules in mind. Okay, so social engagement. What do we know about social engagement? It is associated with living longer with fewer disabilities. So I think a lot of us have heard about how isolation is poor for our mental health, it's poor for our physical health. It's also linked directly, so I'm going to read you this last stat. Isolated individuals' mortality increases 2 to 4 times compared to people who have social contacts, friends, family, and community, which I think this is going to be a great bridge over to the senior safety program and what we're doing here in our community. We want to stay socially, mentally active. This is important in all the ways, but definitely important for your brain health. It can also play a part in delaying the onset of dementia. So we want to make sure that we're staying engaged in our communities and kind of refining our social skills even later in life. When you're participating in just one back and forth discussion with someone, so I'm going to stare at Chris and pick on him. So Chris and Officer Perry and I are having a conversation. My brain is doing a lot just in this one dialogue between 2 people. I'm listening to what he's telling me. I'm trying to retain that information. I'm trying to elicit an appropriate response. I'm using my facial expressions and my tone and my body language, as well as my words, to have that discussion with Chris. Your brain is doing so many things in that direct engagement. So think about what it would do when you're in a room full of people or when you're doing an activity with a group of people. So make sure that you're staying socially engaged as well. So visit with your friends and family, engage with others, stay involved in your community, find a way to volunteer, even if you're not working or working full-time, pick up some hobbies. We all want to find different ways that we can have some purpose. Do you have a question, or is the sun getting out? Oh, yeah, please.
Do you have any recommendation on frequency for social engagement?
Frequency for social engagement? It's a little tricky because it's different for everyone, right? Like I get kind of recharged by being around people. My husband could probably use like maybe 2 social engagements a week, and then he feels pretty exhausted. So unfortunately, it kind of, my little brother, I'm really proud of him. He talks about his social battery. And when his social battery is empty, he needs to go home. And he started expressing that. And I love it. So I would say, it's, as my grandpa would say, it's clear as mud, right? It's different for every individual. But I would say we want to think about your healthy baseline. As you're thinking about what might work for you, think about what fills you up and then what starts to make you feel depleted. And kind of try and make some plans accordingly. Good question. Okay, so we're going to put all these 4 pieces together before I turn it over to Officer Perry. We want to think about taking care of our health. We want to get moving. We want to eat right and make our french fries the occasional treat. Keep your mind active, variety, novelty, challenge. We want to stay connected with others. We talked about a lot of suggestions and a lot of ideas. I'm sure you have ones that are specific to what you like and what you need, but also think about ways that you can do a lot of these things at once. So I mentioned before, walk with a friend. See if you can drag someone along to learn a new skill. If you're intimidated to learn crochet, make your sister try and teach you. She's trying to do that across the country on FaceTime, and we'll see. But bring some people in and you can kind of check some of these boxes all at once. And if you're doing all of these together, all 4 of these, plus your stress management, plus your sleep, this can really help to maximize the benefits here. So again, what can you do right now after you've learned all of this information? Start today. Do not start training for a marathon necessarily, but do something small, build off of it. Maybe if you're trying to focus on a few goals, what can we do now and what does that look like, 3 months from now? Find things that you enjoy and stick with those. Again, we're looking for that sustainability. We want to make healthy choices as much as possible, but do not feel like you've fallen off the tracks if you have a stressful week and you overindulge. Just try and make a plan and get back on board with it. Get support from others. Tell people that what you learned today, and try and hold each other accountable and make it fun. We want people to age well. This is content that we like to share with people at all ages. These are things that teenagers should be doing as well as people as we all age. And when we think about the biological changes that can happen in our body in our 30s and 40s, you better believe these are things that I'm thinking about too. So this is information that can be helpful for anyone. Okay, so when I give this presentation, I also hear a lot of questions about different specific medications, maybe commercials you see on TV. So I just want to note that if there is something that you saw on TV that sounds too good to be true, it probably is. So make sure that if you do see something that you want to learn more about, consult a trusted expert. Ask questions, but be cautious because these commercials, no matter what they're advertising, they do probably want a little bit of this, right? So they have a very clear motive in mind for how they're trying to sell this to you. So don't be convinced that you found a miracle cure. I did tell you we don't have a cure for Alzheimer's as of 6:40 this evening. So if it's telling you that this will solve all your problems and you'll never get Alzheimer's, it's probably not telling you the truth. Do some thorough research, or if you're totally overwhelmed, you can come to me, the Alzheimer's Association, talk to your pharmacist, talk to a trusted doctor. Okay, so I'm going to very quickly tell you a little bit about what we do. I will hang back after the presentation and we'll kind of talk a little bit more at the Q&A, but just to touch on what we do with the Alzheimer's Association and how we can help. We do have a 24/7 helpline. So if you have family, friends who live across the country, live out of state, this is an 800 number that anyone who's looking to receive resources, has a question, needs immediate assistance, they can call 24/7 at this number. They can answer the line in over 200 languages and make sure people get connected to help immediately. So if our offices are closed or it's a weekend or a holiday, make sure that people get this information. We have all different types of free education. We'll talk a little bit about that when I share with Officer Perry what the next topics as part of the series look like. But we offer support groups as well. If you do know someone who is navigating a dementia diagnosis with their loved one, we have lots of support groups that meet in the community. We have caregiver education programs, social engagement for people living with the disease. We also offer free family care consultations. So let's say you know someone who was recently diagnosed, they're totally overwhelmed and they don't know where to start. We have clinicians in our Cincinnati office who do free individualized care planning for families. So even if they need a referral, they need just someone to guide them through where to start, tell them that they can call our local office and schedule that. They can come meet them in the community, over the phone, or at our office. Okay, that's one more plug for the 24/7 helpline. If you needed to take that down, it is on every single resource that we have back at the table. And I'm going to turn it over to Officer Perry. Thank you.
So I am Chris Perry. I came here just a little over a year ago.
Phone, is your microphone?
Okay, I'll get you. So my name is Chris Perry. I came here a year ago from Cincinnati Police Department. I did 26 years in Cincinnati and was fortunate enough to get hired here in Amberley. I have a personal experience with dementia. I lost my mom to dementia, and that made such an impact on me. I knew that that's what I wanted to do with the rest of my life. I had to have some kind of input with that because I went through it. It was absolute devastation. I also am active in peer support with first responders, post-traumatic incident response, a number of things. Big mental health advocate. In the senior safety program wise, research shows that social interaction and minimal support can drastically increase independence for seniors and homebound individuals. I know that to be an absolute fact. I've seen it in practice, and it absolutely works. The Amberley Village Police Department established a senior safety program through grants from the Jewish Home of Cincinnati. We're increasing personal interaction with seniors and homebound residents, increase information sharing and keep residents connected to their community, assist in supporting seniors in their effort to age in place, encourage additional avenues for partnership between police and community, identify residents who may need minor support to reduce risks in their homes. We are the Amberley Village Police Department, Jewish Home of Cincinnati, and other community partners such as the Alzheimer Association. We serve Amberley Village residents 60 and plus, and Amberley Village homebound residents. So what we can offer is lift assist in case of a fall. And I've done that multiple times. Battery replacements for safety devices. If you have a smoke detector and the battery goes out, give me a call. I'll come over and replace the battery. Or, anything that you have an issue with like that, I will assist you. Assistance with programming garage door remote controls. I did that not too long ago. We synced all the remote controls to the 2 different garage doors, and the person I helped had been trying to get that done for like a year and a half. So I spent a couple hours at that person's house and we got that all taken care of. And it made a huge difference. It made her happy, but it made me happy as well. And I really got a lot out of it. And then the programming with the lights, you have the lights on, timing switch. It's not easy to do. And so I went over and we got that situation sorted. Scams and the questions that come with that. So I get probably, I'd say 6 or 7 of these texts a week that tell me my PayPal got hacked, or I ran a toll booth or whatever. Okay? So if you have that situation and you're worried about it, call me or email me and I'll look at it with you and we'll figure out if it's real or not. Just don't have any interaction with them until you talk to me about it. We'll go over it. I think everybody in this room is probably experiencing that daily. So when I come to your house, I'll check it for your smoke detectors and carbon monoxide detectors. And if you need new ones, call me and I'll come over and install those. Not a problem at all. I enjoy doing it. Look around and see what your lighting is like inside and outside of the home. I want your steps to be well lit when you're walking out of to the driveway. Make sure that your lights on your garage door opener are working. Make sure all your paths to entry and exit are clear, and especially your bathroom, the hallway, with lighting issues. Checking the stairways for safety, make sure all the steps are in good conditions, there's nothing obstructing the steps. And then with the door handles and locks, we'll make sure they're functional, but if you're also having problems with your hands and you can't really manipulate a doorknob, we'll look into helping you get levers. So it's a lot easier for you that way. So with the emergency planning stuff, keep lists accessible for first responders when they show up. So what I'm looking for there is a list of your medications. This is completely optional, but it helps first responders quite a bit. They can look and see what medications you're actually taking in case somebody's incapacitated. And then also emergency contacts and next of kin. A lot of times it's really difficult to find anybody. If you fall, you have to be transported. I have to know who to call. So I would recommend putting those on the refrigerator. So when you have any kind of experience with dementia, which I think of my own situation when I talk about this, there's a stigma associated with it, just like there is with any mental health issue. When you're dealing with first responders, be upfront and let them know that you have a person that's experiencing dementia. My mom had Lewy body dementia, and she would hallucinate. There were multiple times when it was a real issue. She would call in the middle of the night, 911. My dad would be sleeping, and she would say there's a man in the house with a gun. Well, that's going to create a police response. Well, my dad was asleep. He's a retired Cincinnati policeman. So yes, there is a gun in the house. He's a man. But my worst fear is the policeman coming down to the house and he's shining a light in the window. My dad thinking it's a burglar, and now we have a tragedy. So that was a nightmare condition. But any chance you get, if you do call the police, just let them know that there's somebody's in the house that is experiencing dementia. So in a support way, there's several people in this room that I have stopped by for visits, and we spent several hours talking, and I really enjoyed that. I will listen to you vent. That's probably one of the healthiest things you can do. If life's got you down and you're just feeling upset, just call me and I'll stop by and we'll talk about it, especially if you're dealing with anything with dementia. Caregivers are extremely stressed. My dad was stressed to the point where he started having seizures. So now I have my mom who has dementia, and my dad's having seizures. My dad wanted to do it all by himself. You don't have to do it by yourself. There's resources, and there's also money. I'll come over and we'll talk. Just get it out. Don't hold it inside. Self-care and sleep hygiene. Give yourself some grace when you're dealing with this stuff. It's extremely stressful. And then, like Kelsey said, stay off your phone before bed. And what I really like to do before I go to bed is 4-7-8 breathing. Get myself calmed down, start to read, and then I'm out. But that 4-7-8 breathing is really good to calm down with.
What is it called?
4-7-8 breathing.
Oh, okay, yes.
And then support for anybody that's suffered the loss of a loved one. I've been through that multiple times. Once again, you don't have to do it alone. I kind of want you to think of me as like the son-in-law that stops by to help you in situations. I mean, that's what I want it to be. And when you call me or talk to me, call me Chris. I'd rather be Chris than Officer Perry. I want to be your friend more than I want to be a policeman. And I'll give you referrals for support groups, whatever you might need. So here's something I want to kind of judge interest in. And this is an idea I came up with. So what I want to do is the Alzheimer's logo. You guys are familiar with that? So I want to put that on a reflective sticker about the size of a 50-cent piece. That would go on the back of your car or on the door to your house. There aren't many people that are going to know what that is, so if there's a stigma there, it's not that big of a deal. But I can think of multiple times that this would have been really helpful for me. So that sticker would be reflective, so it's going to reflect light from a flashlight or from headlights of your car. Would you guys be interested in anything like that?
I think that'd be a good idea.
Okay. I think the more we get this out, the more first responders are going to know what that symbol is. So I guess it was November of last year was the first time that we rolled out dementia training for first responders. So what started that was I volunteered with the Alzheimer's Association, and then I thought, how can I try and prevent a situation like the one we were dealing with at my house, with the police officer not knowing anything about dementia. And I've been a policeman for 31 years and didn't know anything about it until I experienced it with my mom. So we're putting this training out there, and the last session we do is going to contain Dementia Live.
Yep.
So Dana Ritchie and I from the Alzheimer's Association started thinking about kind of revamping training for first responders with this. The training that they had, it wasn't very up to date, and it didn't have everything in it that it needed to have. So we put our heads together and we thought, well, how can we do this? So we went through it, built it from, I think we started in May or June, and then we went to November before we rolled it out for everybody. And then during that course of time, we met Veronica Sterling, who has the license for Dementia Live. So Dementia Live is an immersive experience where you put the headphones on, goggles that restrict your vision, and gloves that affect your dexterity. It mimics what it would be like to have dementia. So the first time I went into it, I'm a person that doesn't quit. I will not quit. So I went in and I stayed in it way too long. They ended up pulling me out. But when I came out, my whole perspective was completely changed. I started looking at things in reverse and thinking, this is why my mom acted that way. This is why she did this. This is why she got so irritated by that. I think it's a life-changing experience. And all the first responders that attend, they walk out and they don't say a word. It's that impactful. And it reminds you of when you see a movie in the theater, and it's like really deep and emotional, and everybody leaves the theater at the same time, and nobody says a word. It's just silent. And everybody does that, and then they come up and we start talking about it. None of us have ever had this training before. So now all these first responders are being trained, and they're going to be better equipped to serve you in the future. The Village Alert System, you can scan that code right there and sign up that way, or we should have forms in the back, right? You can sign up for that.
In the folders.
Okay. So then that is my contact information. You can email me or call me at that number. Whatever you need. It doesn't have to be anything serious. If you're lonely, thinking about something, some hard choice you have to make, you want a friend, I'll come over. We'll sit down, drink coffee, and talk for a while. I love hearing stories because I learned so much from it. One person in here I learned a tremendous amount from. My second grandma, my second mom, actually. So it's you're not troubling me and you're not pulling me away from the street. I don't get dispatched, so it's not a problem if you call me. Call me, ask for anything, and I'll do whatever in the world I can for you. You guys have any questions about that?
Can I say something about this? Sure. He came to my house
for the first time, and a half-hour visit came to be 3 hours. And he said to me, do you want me to have Sean and I come to interview you? I said, okay. Well, apparently there was an interview, and people saw it in this city, and as far as London. Somebody happened to watch that clip, and she called Chris, and she says to him, I know this lady, can I get her phone number? He said, I cannot do that because I don't know if she would like to. Well, apparently she told him she was a student of mine 25 years ago at UC. And she since called me and talked to me, and we started all over again. The impact of this gentleman, a friend, a policeman, I may even call you almost a son. He has been so helpful. And I think this was the most incredible experience that I had with the police. Who would ever want to be a friend of police? I was afraid of them. I need to respect them and listen to them, but I was afraid of them. I didn't want anything to do with them. But it's not so. It has been the most incredible, rewarding experience for me. Hearing, and I think you're very fortunate to have such a wonderful gentleman here. And I would give a credit to all the police.
Nice.
Now you have me with tears in my eyes. These relationships are fantastic. And I'll tell you, 26 years with Cincinnati, and I did 4 years in Kentucky before I came to Cincinnati. When you get near your retirement, you start really thinking about things. What did I accomplish? And you know you did good things, but there wasn't anything I could really hang my hat on. And it was kind of a depressing feeling, like I didn't really achieve what I wanted to. And then I started to think about it, and I thought, well, you know what I lost? I lost the human connection. Because I worked in the traffic unit, and I did crash reconstruction. That's extremely difficult work and very depressing. And the career was starting to come towards an end, and I'm thinking, what am I going to do? I had to do something. And then, by God's will, this opportunity presented itself. And it's been the greatest part of my career. And now I have a human connection. And it only cost me like $20 to have, was all I'll say that. But no, that's a fantastic experience, and I love every minute of it, and I will do anything in the world for you. So don't hesitate to ask for it, please.